Welcome to Riverdale After Dark, a podcast about the CW's Riverdale that is finally back from the dark and has reached its climax. I'm Alex.
When you travel in the dark and then you're like, is that a little darker over there? Let me go check out the darker place. And you get there and you're like, yup, this is dark. That's where we are right now. I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And we are going to be talking about, as very cleverly teased by me in the opening there, Riverdale Chapter 77.
Wow.
Climax. I mean, I nailed it. I just want to put that out there.
Wow. Yo, just before we get started, I'm going to pat myself in the back.
The self-high five to kick off season.
It.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting episode. I think everybody is aware of this, but we kind of can review anyway. This is technically the Season 5 premiere of Riverdale, but the large majority of it was filmed as Season 4, Episode 20. They weren't able to finish it. I've seen different reports. There was either 2/3 or 3/4 or something. Most of the episode was filmed, and then they came back in October, I think, something like that, whenever they were allowed to start filming again, and then they finished off the episode. So the first 3 episodes we're going to see here on the season, ostensibly with some tweaks because they had a lot more time to write on everything, are the end of Season 4 rather than the beginning of Season 5. So that's all set up to say, before we get into it, before we get into the recap, before anything, this is in a little bit of an odd duck place with a season premiere. You usually want to be like, here's the table setting, here's what's going on, here are the challenges for the season. Remember these characters? This is Archie. He's the guy with the red hair. But we're jumping right into it here. And not only are we jumping right into it, we're also getting a Katy Keene crossover, very sadly, months after the show was actually canceled. This was supposed to air at the same time.
That crossover hits different now.
Yeah, it really does.
But I'm glad they still did it. It was great.
It would have been weird if they cut K.O. Kelly out of the episode.
Yeah, he's an important part. Though Archie could have boxed like just a version of himself, and I would have been like, okay.
Just a couple of lugs.
I'll roll with that. So that all said, I mean, I'm putting all those caveats out there because we can't really treat this like a normal season premiere of Riverdale. But how'd you feel? Broad strokes, like, what was your feeling seeing this back after so many months?
Well, I take your point that it is weird because it's definitely picking up. We never had resolution on all of our plot threads. But I would argue so much happens in every episode of Riverdale that it's not that odd in a season premiere to be like, remember all this stuff? It's still happening. Here's all these details. Mm-hmm. And just moving at that breakneck pace. So, like, I think it totally works as a premiere, and the fact that we've been away so long, I don't feel any rust on the old Riverdale wheels here. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I agree a little bit with Zalvin because it's like, normally with my Riverdale...
It's not about agreeing. I was just stating facts.
Shut up, Zalvin. I'm talking. So when it's
we're
like...
back into it.
New tone. Who this?
When we're trying to, like, Riverdale ramps up and then goes hard, you know, but usually that first episode, it gives you a little bit of a table setting. And because Riverdale is breakneck, I wasn't ready. Like, right out of the box, it was like, boom, boom, boom. And I was like, oh, shit. I'm also not ready because I knew what was coming. And so I was dreading where we are. But it's great to have it back. I wasn't ready for all that happened in this episode.
It's also really nice that the reveals at the end of last season of the masked video people, like, that's the scariest shit they've done in the series, I think. And to pick back up at the top of this season with that, I was like, whew, it just, like, gets you right in the spine.
There's been cannibalism. There have been, like, flying babies over campfires. How is this, like... Cheryl was hanging out with a dead body for a long time.
This is just visually creepy. We don't know who these people are, though I have my suspicions. And the way that we jump into it right at the start of this episode, I thought was just perfectly unsettling.
Before we get too much into the episode, and we'll walk through the whole thing, of course, let's do a brief, if possible, bit of recap. Certainly there's a lot of things we need to know.
And just so you all know, Alex has been working on this for 6 months. He's been working on this recap for 6 months.
I definitely wrote everything down. This is not off the top of my head or anything like that. This is very carefully scripted. So I'm sure there's nothing I'm going to forget. The big mystery of the season, there's actually been 2 mysteries. In the middle of the season, there was a whole thing where Jughead went to Stonewall Prep. That was ostensibly wrapped up at the end of episode 16, I believe. But we do get a tease of that again, specifically from Brett Weston Wallace, who was his main antagonist there, is now in prison. He is somebody who is very involved in stealing videotapes, taking videotapes of people, and that's what we've been slowly teasing out through the course of this season, thanks to a villain initially called the Voyeur, now called the Auteur, officially as of this episode. I guess it's an open question whether they're the same thing, whether they're different people. Riverdale certainly hasn't been afraid of having multiple people playing the same villain before, but we can discuss that in a little bit. As it is, the Voyeur started off just kind of taking footage of people's doorways, slowly moving into their houses, doing creepy stuff there, and then the Auteur has moved it on into restaging, sort of sweeting, if you will.
Okay. Alex has been taking a film class in the off-season.
I have. I've had a lot of time. I took it at the University of Phoenix.
Nice.
Very cool. How'd you travel all the way out there?
Virtually. So the Auteur has been redoing these things, as Justin mentioned. They've been wearing masks of the main characters in the show and repeating significant things that have happened in the show. Like we saw Jason Blossom's murder. We saw some of the Hal Cooper Black Hood stuff, other things like that. Basically, whatever is most traumatizing for our main characters, they have seen through the Auteur. And the last thing that happened before we left off is it certainly looked like in the episode Killing Mr. Honey, they killed Mr. Honey. As it turns out, this episode, we're jumping ahead a little bit, he's alive and fine, which is kind of surprising and sort of tossed offhand. But that was definitely the big thing that we were left on. It looked like they were all stabbing him based on a story that Jughead had wrote. So they've been investigating that. Tied into the investigation is a video store called Blue Velvet, of course, based on the David Lynch film. The guy who owns it is also named David, looks like David Lynch,
acts like David Lynch, sounds like David Lynch. If it's not David Lynch, it should be.
This show is saying that David Lynch killed people, basically.
Well, right now he's doing weather reports to YouTube, and that's pretty fucked up.
Yeah, that's terrifying, but so lucrative.
Mm-hmm. He's probably getting a lot of ad revenue off of that. So that's what's been going on with the Auteur Voyeur storyline, all of those things being delivered as VHS tapes. We'll talk more about that as we get into the episode. Let's move over to the romantic side of things. Yes, Pete?
Yes.
We're gonna get into VHS versus, like, you feel like they should have DVD players? Is that what you're...
I mean, I'm not going to harp on it too much other than the next half hour or so.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, nice.
I'm looking forward.
They should have released it on vinyl, man. That's the way.
The sound is better. The sound's better. So let's move over to the romantic side of things. The big thing that went down is during this year's Hedwig and the Angry Inch, not musical, but talent show. It's a little confusing to explain it that way. But
it was quite musical.
Yeah. Betty and Archie kissed. And after that, Archie wrote a song for Betty called Carry the Torch, which she stopped him from finishing singing and said, no, listen, I love Jughead, my boyfriend. You love Veronica, your girlfriend. We can't do this. Let's move on. And the next episode, everything was fine and they didn't refer to it at all. Yes,
exactly.
Justin.
Great recap, but to call it just a kiss is
nope,
diminishing at the very least.
That's all
it was the origin of love. It was like seeing a flower bloom right in front of your eyes, like
I think you're projecting onto
rocketing past the sky. It was a moment. It was a moment.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way of describing it. And then
the vaccine for the coronavirus was born in our brains. In that
I would say it wasn't as beautiful as maybe somebody hanging upside down from like trapeze and kissing somebody. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, that is a very specific thing about something that happened between you and Justin in your past. Let's not move on.
To be fair, it's not between Pete and I.
Oh, sure. I mean, it certainly felt Justin, that way the amount of times Pete has brought it up. I'm just saying.
It was a big moment for Pete watching me kiss a stranger upside down on a trapeze swing.
This is confusing for everybody in the middle of our recap. Let's talk about the specific stuff with everybody else. So Veronica, one of the main things she's been dealing with is that her father Hiram has a degenerative muscular disorder. We find out how that is cured this episode. We'll get to that. Archie has been managing a gym called El Royale and has been interested in joining the Navy after school, specifically boxing for the Navy and getting a full ride scholarship on that. He kind of moved away from that a little bit due to various things going on in his world, but we loop back to that this episode. And Cheryl and Toni are dating. I think that's the main thing you need to know about them going into this episode, because nothing else really ties into other things. Should we jump into it? I'm sure we'll cover more things.
We should talk about Charles.
Sure.
Who is Betty's brother, who works for the FBI, and it likes to involve teenagers in his investigations.
Right. Yes. We should also talk about, you should recap all of Katy Keene so people get the crossover.
No problem. She's a fashion designer dating a guy named K.O. Kelly. The end.
Oh, come on.
I did that while you were taking a sip so you couldn't object too much. No. I mean, this takes place 5 years earlier than Katy Keene, so the main things you need to know are the same things that we've seen on Riverdale, which is that Veronica is friends with Katy Keene from back in New York. Katy is dating a boxer named K.O. Kelly, and that's what pops up this episode. None of the other things that happened on Katy Keene have happened yet. So let's jump into it. This is a little note, but I'll tell you what, on the whole season premiere thing, I was so happy to hear Previously on Riverdale again with the music behind it. That was great.
Yeah. And just across the board, I thought this episode was really well made just across the board. The sequence where they're at the rave that we're going to talk about in a little bit was just really beautifully made, I thought.
What?
And it was great.
That was so fucking creepy. What are you talking about?
That's what I'm talking about.
It could be creepy and beautifully made, Pete.
No. That's what I'm saying. I feel like this episode had so much tension that I think the show always has tension, but it's rare to see it really extended across different plot lines, and they did a great job of that here. Just a great episode to come back on, despite the sort of middle of the story moments that we had. Well,
and in fact, we start in what we assume is the Auteur's cabin, the place that's been his or her base of operations. Mr. Honey is fine. As I mentioned, we find out very casually, which is surprising to me. Yeah. And in fact, nobody tried to kill him at all, so he had no idea of what was going on. Also, we get the detail, and I don't know if this is true, but only Betty and Jughead knew about the story killing Mr. Honey. So I know we're jumping right into theories here, but that to me seems a very big clue. There has to be somebody they're leaving out there that had access to that story, right?
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I have my pick on that. The theory I've been pushing for a while that Jelly Bean is perhaps behind this whole thing, and I think there's a lot of evidence for that in this episode. And I think that is specifically she has access because it's in their house.
Yeah, I was like, you walk away from this episode, and you were kind of like scratching your head, like, is Jelly Bean been masterminding this whole thing?
I think so. That's been a working theory on this podcast for quite some time.
We'll see. We also get a neat little, very Riverdale note where they find these tickets that have B and V on them, and Betty immediately says, Betty and Veronica?
I thought that was very strange. Like, especially Betty's like, like investigate. They're all Bughead's always investigating. They're like Clue, and she's like, Betty and Veronica. That seems. I'm one of those letters. It's like what?
Well, I think given the fact that this villain is wearing masks that look like them, it's not entirely without out of the realm of possibility. You know?
True.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to when the meta masks thing is done. That really kind of pulls me out of the story because it's like they're wearing masks that look like from the comic book, like old school. So it kind of It gets a little too meta for me.
And
I
not
love
for
them.
nothing, I mean, not to jump back to the previous point, but my name is Alexander Zalbin, and I think it's pretty fucked up that Arizona uses my initials.
Yeah, that's true.
Wow.
Every time AZ's in the news, you're like, what?
Yeah.
Oh,
Who, me?
Arizona.
Oh, here we go again. But it turns out it's actually for Blue Velvet. That's what Jughead figures out very quickly. And they realize that David, the video store owner who is super creepy, has probably something to do with everything that's going on. Just a little note here. I liked going back to here. That felt like a one-off weirdness in Riverdale episode, but I'm glad they're looping back to this location because I think it's a fun one for the show.
I agree, and it just adds to the map of like the seedy places that we all have gone to throughout the Riverdale world, the White Worm and all that stuff. Like this, I could picture this in like a little like strip mall on the side of the road. It's great.
I completely disagree. I want them to burn that whole video store to the ground. It's way too creepy to exist.
You're more of a streaming service guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want them to go log on to some sort of
Yeah, I don't think
Netflix.
I don't think it's cool to have underground like snuff film raves where people are dying and shit.
Oh, you don't think that's cool?
I don't think that's cool.
Well, let me take you out on a little ride, Pete. You're going to see some great snuff film raids.
No, thanks.
This is a fun fact. Not a lot of people know this, but back in the 90s, Pete was arrested for burning down many blockbusters.
Yep, he single-handedly created Netflix.
So
You're welcome.
that's why Netflix is colored red. It's because of all the fire. that Pete
Blockbuster
caused.
fires.
Yes. Archie went running, comes back. Veronica is waiting in his room for him. And then we get... I'll say this. The Varchie storyline in this episode was, I think, the absolute best part of the episode. So well done,
Yeah.
so emotional. Loved how KJ Apa and Camila Mendes played it. And to your point, Justin, her pulling out Carry the Torch and being like, I found this song you wrote, my heart stopped at that point.
Yeah.
100%. And like, I don't know if you guys have noticed this about my sort of commentary on Riverdale. I'm sort of a Varchie guy.
Oh, really?
But
Did
yeah.
that happen during the break, or is that new?
I guess it's just been slowly happening, slowly evolving, slowly growing, blossoming. But
Screw
in
you.
my
Don't
heart,
bring Cheryl into this.
But when you see the look on Archie's face, is he sees his girlfriend, who he loves, and I do think he does love Veronica, and he's terrified of her because you know that deep down she knows, they both know this song is going to ruin this. And it's just, you know, that feeling when you're in a relationship, you're like, oh, I don't think this is going to work out. And once you have that feeling, it's like a rot in your body until you either break up or resolve it or something like that.
Yeah, and it's worse because Veronica doesn't see it coming. Archie,
Yes.
it's coming crashing straight towards him, and he does not know what to do. He doesn't know the right thing to do at this point. Awful. And his answer to her being like, no, I stink. I'm a terrible songwriter. Let me throw that in the garbage. Here we go.
The fact that when she saw that song, he wasn't like, I kissed Betty right away. Oh God, I stop first. He can't hold secrets.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad that he finally came clean. But I think Veronica knew as soon as she saw the song. I think she knew what was up because she put it out there in a way that got the reaction.
I think I don't think so. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that maybe somewhere deep down she had an inkling in the back of her brain, but I don't think she put it together. What happens over the course of the rest of the episode, she is stunned by what happens.
Yeah, it's just like an emotional pinch. You put a little pin in, like, that was a weird reaction. Bing.
Yeah, but like the fact that if you read the lyrics to the song, you know. It's not about you. It's she knows it's not about her. So I think there's a little.
Let's sing the song and see if there's anything that sticks out.
Okay, sure.
Carry the torch. I love Betty, my neighbor.
Yeah,
not Veronica, Betty, the neighbor in the window. Kiss, kiss. I kiss Betty.
Her last name's Cooper. I want to be specific.
Don't tell my friend Jughead. He'll be mad.
Exactly my point.
This is a true song. Want to be clear about that, too. Anyway, it's a really beautiful song. So Archie she gets a call. He's like, oh, I wanted to ask you if you wanted to join me in the shower. They have a sweet kiss. So he's kind of blowing past the whole carry the torch thing, carrying on as if things are normal. She gets called away by the lodges. We get... again, very funny exchange, I thought, where she comes in and she's like, oh, what are you going to tell me? You're chaperoning the prom? And he's like, well, yes, but anyway, moving on to the second order of business.
It's good. Just dropping in some details that'll become important later. Because the second order of business is crazy also.
It's also crazy that, if you go out and beat people, that it can cure cancer and do a lot of amazing things.
Well, he doesn't have cancer. He has an unspecified degenerative muscular disorder.
That gets better when you beat people in the street?
Yes. I
wow.
think,
How's that
if I was to venture a
yes
guess, I think, perhaps rightly, there are certain members of the Riverdale fan base that will be furious that this sort of thing was not treated seriously at all. But I think the way that they do treat it is completely within the realm of fantasy. They didn't say he had a very specific disorder. It wasn't something that they were trying to treat. They were trying to treat it as an emotional storyline for Veronica, but not in a serious way. And we knew, to get back to the Katy Keene of all, he shows up in the season 1 finale and he's fine. So we know he's going to survive.
And there's a lot of speculation amongst us and everyone, like, is he faking it for some purpose? So, we still don't have an answer on that. We just know that he continues to be jacked and is continuing to fight in the streets.
He's just getting larger.
It just felt like a very soap opera thing to do, where it was like, I'm going to die. No, I'm cured. It was just like...
Yes.
I'm starting to think this show might be purposefully dramatic.
Oh, man.
You know what I'm talking about?
Wow.
Yeah, other than that documentary, which is the Carry the Torch song, I think I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on with Hiram. Veronica calls the doc just to check. Very smart move there. Again, Veronica, I think, MVP of this episode. But she's like, okay, fine. Hiram's doing good. Let's move on. And then we get a very quick scene. The Blue Velvet guy, David, is being questioned, says he doesn't know anything. And Charles is like, well, I guess he doesn't know anything.
Oh, my God.
That's just
sucks
detective
at
work.
being an FBI agent.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Betty is questioning her own source, who is Miss Bell, who is livid that Betty's like, what are you asking me?
Yeah.
Do I sell snuff films? What is going on?
Well, and that's what this whole episode, Betty, I feel like was sort of off her game when it comes to, I don't know if it was a purposeful thing or if it was just like sort of moving through the story. But yeah, when she accuses the secretary of making snuff films, it was like, what? And Betty even was like, I don't know. I'm just out here on the streets. And then
just
Weatherby,
following up leads.
Weatherby walks in and it's like, oh yeah, you were involved in a cult. And he's back and a little off, and Betty, even that's like unsettling for Betty. It was like
my two favorite lines from Weatherby, where she's like, oh, you're back, and he's like, yes, just in time for senior prom and graduation, 2 of the 3 episodes at the end of this season.
Yeah.
And then I really did like the delivery on the line where she asks how he's doing, and he says, well, I make it through most nights without screaming, and then smiles and leaves. That was good too.
Again, this whole episode was so unsettling, and that interaction was like, wait, what are we supposed to take away from this?
I agree with you. To get back to the Betty and the Jughead investigation this episode, I mean, I don't think there was anything crazy out of character or anything like that. But yes, Betty is very unsettled. She is doing the regular delving into her darkness thing that she does that kind of throws her off her game. We'll get to this later. Jughead does my least favorite thing, which, mind you, is consistent with what he has done throughout the show, where his investigation technique is yelling at people until they confess.
Yeah.
Very Archie.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the Archie of investigations, I think.
Yeah.
So then we go over to Archie's storyline, speaking of which. The Commandant comes in. He gets a tour of El Royale. He's very impressed. And he mentions, though, that because Archie deferred, he started looking out for some other candidates. Specifically, he got somebody in Queens. Veronica proposes they do a boxing match to determine who gets the spot at the Naval Academy. Commandant is like, great, that's how we do things in the Navy. And then reveals that it's K.O. Kelly. Pete, as the number 1 K.O. Kelly stan on the internet, how'd you feel about this?
I thought it was glorious, and so it worked. In this insane world, it works. Like, why not? If Archie is going to, do this, why not? He has to go up against K.O. Kelly, and I really like how they handled K.O. Kelly. I was very worried about him coming into this insane world because he is this kind of like, savant and is pure in a way. So I really liked how they handled him, and him and Archie together were very adorable. And also, Veronica and KO had a little chemistry.
Whoa. Selling out Katy Keene, Pete. I didn't expect that right at the end there.
And now, Pete, do you like that KO Veronica
Well,
chemistry?
I mean, clearly Archie and Veronica aren't working. I mean, Archie's blown it twice now, so I feel like, Veronica's...
You getting a little choked up there? You're getting a little raspy.
Crying?
Are you?
Shut
Pete,
up,
are you
man.
crying?
I wasn't ready for this episode.
Everyone knows that K and KO stands for chemistry.
I was surprised how much K.O. Kelly there was in this episode.
Yeah.
Me too. And the fact that Archie, I mean, it points to sort of the nature of the foursome of the show, but the fact that the closest relationship Archie has in this episode is with KO. They like straight up bond. They're like really connecting.
Couple lugs.
Yeah.
They have a sleepover. It's very cute.
It's very cute. They get to really be shirtless together, which I know is Archie's main form of bonding.
Do you want to talk about the fight later, or can we go through the whole thing now since we're talking about it?
Yeah, let's go through bit by bit. I think we're walking through this episode because things jump around so much versus breaking off the storylines. But
now, what would happen if your partner was like, "Oh, I have a solution. Why don't you fight this very strong man?"
I'd do it.
Yeah,
cool. Good to know.
And let him stay over, and the whole time.
I'd do anything anybody asked me to do.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
That's a weird.
Oh, I know, Pete, Alex. Why don't you guys resolve this with a boxing match where you fight each other to the death? I guess.
I mean, I'm into it. Whatever you want, Justin. You asked.
And then whoever wins is the ultimate KO stan.
Wow.
So let's jump over to Cheryl and Toni. We got our first Cheryl and Toni scene here. They are selling tickets to the prom. Very fun scene. I enjoyed this quite a bit.
Classic
where
Cheryl.
Cheryl is like, I want to be prom queen. Toni doesn't quite understand why it's important, but is like, you know what, I'll back you up, whatever, all good. And then Kevin comes up, and Fangs really wants to be prom kings together, and Cheryl just completely shuts him down. Toni is like, I wouldn't do that, which is very funny. I think everybody was very fun in this scene. And it was also... I thought, not for nothing, I know there was a whole thing during the break with Vanessa Morgan very rightly speaking out about her part on the show and how she felt she was treated. They clearly resolved it amicably behind the scenes. I don't think it affected this episode because they had already shot most of it. I expect what we're going to see with Toni going forward is really going to be episode 4. But even in this early going, it was nice to see coming back into the season and feeling like, okay, Toni gets to do some stuff where normally in this scene, it would be like Cheryl goes nuts, Toni rolls her eyes and says, babe, and that's pretty much it. But this felt like a more expanded and reasonable version of that in terms of the dialogue.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
great.
and the story I thought was nice for them throughout the episode.
Yeah, it was
I
almost
will
like...
respectfully disagree, and I have some issues with it that we'll get into later.
Well,
Great.
okay. But I thought it was nice that we did get to kind of sit in their moment where they were kind of talking about their relationship, and I felt like both had like clear things that we could get behind, and I thought it worked.
What I liked about it is they were actually being honest with each other by the end of it, and it felt like they were dealing with stuff as opposed to most of the Shoni Showpass scenes are just like, what do we need to do? Let's move on.
And then also,
it was more fleshed out, at least.
Yeah.
I like the reveal that Toni was like, I want to be the Serpent Queen, so it was fun.
There you go, coming for Jughead's crown. He's going down.
Yeah.
Then Riverdale logo. After all that, we are half an hour into this podcast, and we were just up to that was the cold open. Everybody,
Title sequence. Yeah.
And then the next shot is the kiss of death when my heart broke. It was the shot of the banana split, and then Archie and Veronica behind it, so you know it's over.
Really reading you're sort of unlike you're not a tarot card reader, you're a dessert reader.
Right. That shot it was foreshadowing. It was telling us what was going to happen.
I bet we can figure out who the auteur is, whoever is eating a Vermonster.
Oh boy.
That's good.
Thanks.
That's really you got a great lexicon of dessert, terrifying dessert options.
I can do this all day, to quote Captain America. So Archie and Veronica's pops, as mentioned, she's booked the suite of the 5 seasons. Then we get KO officially entering. We've kind of touched on this, but they have a fun scene together. KO's
Play
very
nice,
confused.
boys.
I love KO's line. There was a lot of explanation and just dismissive explanation in this episode in a very fun Riverdale way where he's like, I don't even think we're in the same weight class. And they're like, well, anyway, moving on. No big deal.
Yeah.
But KO's going to stay at Archie's. And then Jughead's source is revealed. They go and they visit Brett in prison. Now, Pete, I when this scene popped up, I felt like you had to not be happy, right? You didn't want to see Brett again.
No. But it's nice to know that, and I don't know what the timeline is, but he dies a horrible death, which is great to know that happens.
Wait, what are you talking about?
You're talking about the not crossover with Sabrina.
Yeah.
Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Right. Yes. No, that's a different continuity. If you didn't watch Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Brett and
That's
Donna
canon.
and Joan all showed up as the Stone Philosophers, a band over on the last part of Sabrina, and were horribly murdered. It's a different continuity, Pete.
It still counts.
Pete can dream.
I like the scene quite a bit. I like them using him as a source in prison. I also like the threat of War Baby being in prison and Brett's reaction there. I thought that was all fun. And I do hope they keep him around for a while because I think
hates
that's
preppies.
Yeah. I feel like the amount of people they've thrown in prison, they could form, I know we've been asking for this since like season 2, but they could definitely form a Legion of Doom in prison with all the villains they put away.
Well, and they do a lot of scenes where it's like, well, let me go talk to the person we caught last season or a couple episodes ago, see if they know. And they're like, yeah, I know. And I'll tell you what, I don't like being locked up. But here's what you got to do to solve the next part of this mystery.
And he fills them in that David has, in fact, been running what are called red band screenings. They're like immersive raves where he
Is that like Redbox?
Yeah, it's like Redbox. It's the same sort of thing.
No, it's like a red band trailer.
Right. So you can say fuck in the trailer, and it's not a big deal. And you only show it before R-rated movies.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yep.
Again, you're pushing that anti-blockbuster message, Pete. Just pushing that Redbox life.
So the other thing that they find out is in order to get access, they're going to need a real snuff film. So they're like, we got a couple of ideas there.
Oh, my God. The fact that Betty's like, yo, I just got to stop off at the house. I got a couple extra snuff films I can bring.
Yeah, great.
That was insane.
So then we cut back to the Archie storyline. Mr. Keller is concerned about KO, but thinks Archie is stronger. So they make a little side bet to psych KO out, and then we get a workout contest montage. KO can't do as many sit-ups. He can't do as many pull-ups or push-ups. Archie, in fact, is stronger, and they very friendly steam it out afterwards. What
KO can beat the shit out of Archie. So
wow.
Who gives a shit on how many sit-ups you can do? When it comes to fight time, you're getting your ass handed to you.
Well, it helps that KO is truly so much larger than Archie. Archie's just a tight little package, so he's doing what he can do to win that sit-up match.
Just say you love tight packages.
100%.
Man, that was like you setting it up and him KOing you right there.
100% right.
So they go to the Steen room, refer to themselves as the Heavyweight Heartbreaker and the Red Hope.
Oh, my God. Come on.
And then another great, just weird Riverdale line where Archie says, hey, we're going to throw a little party for you at Veronica's speakeasy. And KO's reaction of her, what? was great. Very funny.
It's great. I mean, again, kudos to the show. They bring in outside characters, and the outside characters are as shocked about the story of Riverdale as we, the audience, are. Yeah, I mean, we make this joke a lot, but it's like, KO's like, yeah, I've been watching Riverdale for several seasons, but even I can't believe that you have a speakeasy here. I'm on another show called Katy Keene that just got canceled. Anyway, I'll be ready to fight you in a couple minutes.
Jughead makes the stuff film. Cheryl initially is like, no, I would never do that. And then they say, what about that video of Jason Blossom being murdered? She's like, all right, yes, absolutely, I will, but they can't recognize me because of my signature red hair. She wears a ridiculous wig. Reggie is in a gimp suit. There's no way this is going to work. Like, seeing this, it's very funny, but there is no way in a million years they were ever going to be fooled.
Yes, and I do think the fact that that's what happens so quickly, I think, is great because it's such an odd. It again reinforces the fact that Bughead is off in their schemes and scams, and I guess sort of on all gears here. They're not quite functioning because this is so crazy.
The problem is Jughead, it seemed like, was directing it. If you were going to do it right, you have Dark Betty direct the shit out of this, and people would think it was real.
And they'll be like, snuff film, you just made the video from The Ring, and everyone's dying in 7 days.
Then we get the scene, I'm sure, the one that we really want to talk about here. Veronica welcomes everybody to Le Bon Nuit, says, I'm going to sing a song for you, and she sings Carry the Torch. And the note I wrote down in all caps is, it's very uncomfortable.
Yes.
Truth. And you can see Betty just trying to play it cool and looking at Archie like, what the fuck is this, dude?
Yeah, like, yo, dude, what the fuck are you doing over there?
She's covering your song already? You haven't even released it as a single.
Everybody's reactions here, and they made sure to get everybody's reaction shots. I think KO was like, yeah, this is cool. Wow, songs. I love songs. Jughead is pretty into it. Veronica, of course, is singing it, but Betty, as you mentioned, just staring at Archie. Archie staring at Betty, but also trying not to look at each other at the same time.
Yeah, it was very, very well done. Do you think Archie was like, oh my God, Veronica's carrying a torch for Betty too? This song is crazy.
Did she write that?
This song is crazy.
But good song. So it was nice to hear it. And then this is clearly like the earlier scene. Archie was trying to push past it. Here, he can't do it anymore. They're in the parking lot. KO heads out. Archie gives her Veronica a very perfunctory kiss and doesn't even say, I love you. And I think that's the first, to me, that was the first real inkling that Veronica has that something is very wrong.
Well, I feel like that's the alarm bell going off. I feel like it's like, this is a little weird, but I'm going to sing this song. I'll go to this. And in this moment, she's like, something's definitely up here.
Yeah, I wrote down, no.
We're good at taking notes. I think that's the main takeaway here.
Uncomfortable. No.
So Cheryl and Toni are in bed together. Cheryl wants to invite Toni's family for dinner pre-prom. Initially, I think she thinks they don't like that she's gay is the first excuse that Toni gives. And then Toni, basically Cheryl's like, so what? We're supposed to pretend that I'm not your girlfriend at graduation. And Toni's like, yeah, I think so. So I'm curious to get your guys' take on it. And I know this is kind of getting into the storyline at whole. I know I said this earlier. I was very frustrated to the point of anger at certain points in this storyline, particularly because it felt very out of character for Toni for me. The fact that Toni has been very out about her sexuality, that has been part of her storyline for seasons now. She is the one that not pushed Cheryl to be out of the closet, but allowed her to be out of the closet and worked with her to come around to realizing that she was a lesbian. We have got no indication that she is afraid of anybody at any point. The only thing she has been afraid of, she's even chastised Cheryl sometimes about being like, hey, Kevin's story of coming out, Moose's story of coming out, that's their story. You got to stop. You got to stop being so aggressive about it. Let people find themselves in their own time. Coupled with the fact that we have met, other than a grandfather, nobody in Toni's family until this episode. It was bizarre to me that so much weight was put on what Toni's family was thinking throughout the episode, because I know this is Riverdale and I know we take this episode by episode, but that's something that very specifically has not been built out throughout the show. So it felt like it was this big thing that suddenly came in and it crashed and knocked over the entire storyline. I'll probably reiterate this when we get to the final scenes with Shodi at the end of the prom, but I was curious to get how you guys felt about it, because obviously I had a very strong reaction to everything that went on.
Sure, I understand what you're saying, to ask somebody to pretend to be who they're not is, but the twist is that it's not that. It's because Blossoms are awful people, and that family has done horrible things to that town. So it was I thought the twist was kind of like playing with emotions in a way that doesn't make sense. Sure. But then the kind of reveal, I was like really relieved, like, oh, okay, yes, agreed. Blossoms are creepy as fuck. Like, I could understand someone being like, don't you dare get involved with that insane family. Are you out of your gourd? I heard she's been walking around with a dead person for way too long.
Well, and just to interrupt there, Pete, there's also, which they touch on later in the episode, when we finally meet Tony's relative, back in, I think, season 2, when we first met Tony, there was the whole thing where we found out the Blossoms had stolen the land from the Native Americans who had settled there. Yeah. Tony is descended, at least in part, for their blood. So that's the whole thing going on as well. It's this bad blood thing that plays throughout Riverdale with everybody's relatives going far back. Justin, you're going to say something.
Yeah, because I hear your issues with it, but I agree with Pete. I like the swerve on it because then it ties more. It's not the expected issue that you think they're going to have, and then it makes it harder for Cheryl to get around it because they have a real beef with her, and as opposed to it being just like them being small-minded and biased, they are like, well, we have a long-standing problem with your family, and so that makes the problem like a little larger and a little harder for them to deal with, which I think is good. And on the Tony side, like I definitely like it is a little bit of a contradiction to have her be sort of going around not being truthful, but I also think that's a sensitive spot for her. It feels like her family has always been, I mean, in whether it's a logistics thing or maybe a little bit meta that we've never met them, if this was a real person in our lives and it's like, hey, it's weird we've never met your family, that means they're keeping them out. It means there's a line there. And so whether that's purposeful or not in the story, I think it does track that she is very sensitive about the two sides of her life coming together. And
also there is something about somebody being their own person and someone being very individual with who they are. But then, some families have that older person that you love and respect that might have a backwards belief in something, and it's a problem area for a lot of families and people trying to be who they are, but also feeling some obligation to family members. It's a tough thing.
I mean, I think I completely hear what you guys are saying. I think the issue for me really comes down to, Justin, you're absolutely right. She's never talked about them, but if we ever got a hint at any point between season 2 and season 5 that there was something going on with Tony's family and with Cheryl, rather than it just popping up and resolving itself in the most negative way possible by the end of this episode, that would have worked a lot better for me. And mind you, again, we'll probably talk about this later, but I do think they will probably follow it a little bit in subsequent episodes. I don't think we're done with this storyline, but take it as a whole, this becoming this enormous issue right now was enormously aggravating for me.
Well, and I think it speaks to what Vanessa Morgan was maybe upset about. It's like, hey, you spring this story on the show without any lead up. Like maybe they shot a couple versions of this leading up to it, but it just got cut from the episode. These episodes are jam-packed. Yeah. And so now to drop it like this is a little frustrating if it's not intentional. And hopefully they can speak to that going forward. I feel like, based on everything we've talked about from the sort of entertainment news side of it, that they will.
And also something you said in the earlier part of the episode is this show is insane and a fantasy and doesn't deal with things well.
Yeah. This is something they need to deal with realistically, in my opinion, though. So take that.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's totally fair. Yeah. And it seems like hopefully they will.
Yes. All right. We'll loop back into this again when I'll rant. And
in the meantime, back to the snuff film they made.
Well, first we get Archie and K.O.'s cute sleepover scene. Very adorable. Would definitely watch more of that.
Come on.
Kevin... What?
The couple lugs line was just so adorable. Like KO's kind of like, hey, Archie, man, you got to embrace the fact that you're, who you are. And, some things you just got to, where this is who I thought it was very sweet and quick, but like really kind of was like here. It seemed like KO is in a better place. And Archie, you could be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hashtag lug life.
Yeah.
I also love the fact that there was definitely no reason for KO to be sleeping on his floor when I'm sure they have extra spare bedrooms and places for him to sleep in that house, since they have people coming in and out all the time. But as you mentioned, we go over to the snuff film. Kevin talks to Bughead. They want to sell the snuff film. Obviously, David at the video store is going to recognize Jughead. They've interacted before. Kevin says, "You had me at snuff film." Great. And then we get the scene that we mentioned earlier. Toni talks to her Nana. Cheryl stopped by. Very classic Cheryl, just going ahead and doing the thing anyway, which exacerbates the situation. I wish we had seen that scene because I know I'm harping on this, but one of the other things that was frustrating for me is the only scene we got with Toni's Nana was one scene of her sitting in a chair and being really angry. I don't blame the actress at all, but the fact that it was like in the middle of the episode, we didn't get to see the Cheryl scene. We didn't get to see anything afterwards. It felt like there was something off about the structure there.
Yeah. And I think we can only hope they have more of that coming down the pipeline.
Yes. So David, over to the video store in the snuff film storyline, recognizes Kevin and Betty, kind of course, because of course he does, looks at the snuff film, immediately realizes it's not real at all, and then
So
Betty
funny.
hands him a videotape of Hal Cooper that we saw back in season 2 at the end, I think, which was the birth of the Black Hood. That is where basically his parents turned him into the Black Hood, and David loves it and immediately gives them tickets to a little film festival / rave that he's organizing.
Yeah, and I like this little twist here. It sort of has some Dark Betty undertones, to your point, Pete. The fact that she's like, this stuff film's cool, but let me bring a big gun in the old back pocket.
Yeah. That's Betty thinking ahead, knows like, all right, this isn't going to work.
Well,
I need
think
to
that
back
also
up.
it points to the desperation that Betty has at this point, like that she is willing to give that thing up that plays on our emotions so much, as we see at the what is it called, Film Society screening that happens later on. That's a big deal. So
I was surprised, though, that Jughead and Betty didn't have a little bit of a talk of like, hey, we're probably going to see ourselves up on some of these screens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is going to get real weird. Like, I was hoping a little prep talk, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, didn't happen. And then we get a Riverdale classic. Archie fighting in a boxing match interspersed with more fighting and other things going on. Here, Archie is fighting KO. Meanwhile, Betty and Jughead go into the Film Society. Betty goes in the front door, sneaks Jughead in the back door. So I don't know if I was missing something, but it was weird to me that they mentioned very specifically that Hal's film was playing in room 317.
Yes.
But that isn't anything. As far as I could tell, I think it's a One Direction fanfic on Wattpad, but that's it.
I looked this up as well, found the One Direction thing. Maybe there's a huge fan. I also think it's a song or in lyrics from Miss Saigon.
Oh.
And so I think maybe that's the reference.
Okay. It was weird to me that what's the room from The Shining? Is that 237 or something like that?
237, yes.
237.
When I Googled room 317, there was a lot of The Shining, but it was like, no, that's wrong. That's absolutely inaccurate.
Plus, in Ready Player One, they talk about that room a lot. So,
oh, yeah. It was probably a Ready Player One reference.
Yeah,
that actually explains why the Iron Giant showed up later on.
yeah.
I can't believe he didn't get Prom Robot.
Yeah. But I did like how the last line was like they used the line from the lyrics. I thought that was cool.
Wait, what do you mean?
Never mind.
Okay, good. So they wander through, and we do get to see various videos that have made throughout the show, which I thought was awesome.
Very cool. The Tickle video's playing, very fun. Again, we're still waiting for someone to pledge the amount of money for our Tickle video to be released.
$5,000, patreon.com/comic book club. Pete will tickle anybody. He doesn't care about coronavirus or anything. He'll come to your house and tickle you and breathe in your face.
I refuse to do that.
Too much? Maybe a little too much. So Betty sees Hal's tape. She zones out a little bit. And then, this is the moment we were referring to earlier, she sees the Auteur tapes. Jughead immediately is like, hey, are you the director? Are you the director? Gets in everybody's face.
Oh, my God.
Great detective work right there.
Amazing. Sherlock Holmes used to do that, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. He was known for that. Very stupid, but good at yelling. Sherlock Holmes.
I did like/hate that they recognized Betty from the Ponytail Playmate video.
Oh, yeah, that was just...
Yeah, I appreciated that detail. And then they go up and they see an owl with a cabra, and they're like, aha, that's the auteur.
That's suspicious. Owls, don't trust the owls. That's a Twin Peaks reference.
Oh, is it?
The owls, I forget the actual line, but it's don't trust the owls or something.
I thought it was a Batman crossover Court of Owls reference.
I'm going to guess it's probably the Twin Peaks thing just because...
the owls are not what they seem.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, that almost definitely is what it is. Though I thought it was funny that they immediately just identified the owl. They're like, that's our guy. There we go. Yeah. Quick, grab him. Find out how many licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop.
100%. Now, we see Jelly Bean here.
Yes.
Right after we see the owl. I mean, come on.
So Jughead takes Jelly Bean out. Betty goes after the owl. They miss it. We'll loop back to what happens in the middle. But Jelly Bean and Bughead are pops. And she's like, whoa, I've never been to a red light rave before. I got it from a friend, a ticket from a friend at soccer practice. And I trust that because, as we all know, fucked up shit happens behind the scenes at soccer practice.
Yes, that's a very suspicious game.
Don't put
soccer.
that all on soccer. That's any kind of practice.
No. I used to play soccer as a kid. This is 100% true.
I don't believe that.
And then if we won the tournament, we were told we could get a pizza party and go to a red light rave.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of soccer teams celebrate the end of the season by making a snuff film.
Have you ever seen the movie Ladybugs? The director's cut, not the one that was released theatrically.
Yeah, they murder Rodney Dangerfield at the end of that.
Yeah, he's like, I had no respect as he's dying.
Come on.
Pete hates this.
Yep.
So, yeah, you're pretty convinced that it's Jelly Bean off of this, even though she completely says no.
I've been convinced for a while that they're keeping Jelly Bean in this story for some reason. She popped up at the beginning of this episode. Yep. She's at the rave, and she has sort of a shitty excuse for why she's there.
A very shitty excuse.
What reason are they doing this except for her involvement in this? Is what my question is. Because I know we were pushing Charles and Chick for a long time. Yeah. They have been sort of excised from the story in a lot of ways. Charles is still around, and he's a little weird, but he's mostly just like, sliding Betty in different directions.
Being a FBI agent is what he's doing.
And I'm not saying he's not involved, but I do think that Jelly Bean is just so likely to me.
Yeah. I mean, the other possibility, I'm not saying I disagree with you, but the other possibility could be she was thrown in here specifically because there is suspicion on her, and to get that suspicion off, to get past that particular suspect by writing her off this episode.
To say you've never been to a rave and then you go to a snuff film fucking dungeon rave? No, you got to know somebody to get in there. You can't go to soccer practice one time and get an invite to this. That doesn't make any fucking sense.
No, I don't know. The goalies have tickets to fucked up stuff.
Yeah, she didn't say anything about a goalie. If she would have said a goalie, I would have believed it.
Yeah, they're under constant pressure. I just think that I think it's going to pin back on there are consequences to the people in your lives for being in Riverdale, dealing with all this violence in their lives. And Jelly Bean has been sort of her mind's been warped by it, and that's what the Auteur stuff is about.
Yeah, I could definitely see that as well. I think that certainly, despite what I'm saying, makes the most sense at this point. Let's get back to the Archie storyline. Sad ending to this one. KO wins the fight.
Not sad.
Everybody is bummed out. The Commandant says...
KO's
go
a
ahead,
giant, and he's been training as a boxer. As soon as KO shows up, it was like, I've been training to be a boxer since I was 3 or whatever. There's no way Archie should win that fight. I'm glad.
Archie's like, I'm a songwriter, football player, a lowercase b boxer.
I fought some people in an alleyway once or twice.
You ever fought a bear, KO? Stupid.
KO's like, yeah, a couple of times.
Yeah.
I won. We went out for cheesesteaks afterwards. So I really like this line as well. The Commandant is actually being very nice, and everybody's like, yo, Archie, calm down. Our Commandant's like, his blood's up. It's cool. Yeah. I get it. Son, you can apply in the fall. And Archie says, I'm not your son. And I know we mention this every time, obviously awful real-life circumstances, but I appreciate the fact that they keep hitting this part of Archie's storyline because it gives it a really good emotional grounding.
And it also makes sense that, like, right after he lost, you're angry that you would just be like, fuck you, just kind of blow up, set things ablaze. I thought, like, there have been a lot of crazy Archie moments or times where Archie's flown off the handle. I felt like this at least really made sense to why he would say and do those things.
So then we get a scene with Toni and Cheryl. Toni confronts Cheryl. She's pissed off about Cheryl going to talk to her Nana. Cheryl is also pissed, finds out, as we talked about earlier, that the reason was because she's a blossom, not because of the whole LGBTQ thing. She wants to go to prom with her. Toni seems conflicted here. She's not quite sure. This scene, in the midst of everything, this scene worked for me, because it was very classic Cheryl putting herself in a situation where she didn't belong, ramping things up. Toni would be rightly upset about that. So even though I was not a huge fan of the whole storyline, I think this scene emotionally worked very well.
And also, it like made sense to what happened later, the way Cheryl was just like, I know how much this means to you. We can kind of go through with this.
Well, we can talk about that later.
I was going to say, it was just surprising, I think, more because Toni always puts up with Cheryl's stuff like this. And the fact that she hit a breaking point this episode, I was surprised by this.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely jumping ahead. But the stuff that happens at the end of the episode, to me, felt like Toni always chooses Cheryl. I don't know why she would ever choose her family that we've never met before over Cheryl. That doesn't track for me. That doesn't make sense.
What?
At all.
If you reach a breaking point though with somebody, then that.
Sure, this is Cheryl's behavior. Like, she knows who Cheryl is at this point. They've already been through this.
Alex, are you familiar with what a breakup is?
No, I never have. Dated one person, married them.
Yep. We've never had a breakup. We've been together for 14 years.
There you go. That's the relationship I was referring to. Oh boy.
My
Archie,
first marriage is to this podcast. My second is to my wife and children.
Right. Thank you for listening. My priorities. So Archie is bummed and sweaty. Veronica apologizes about setting this up. She wishes she'd never done it. Says Naval Academy wasn't his only option. He's like, yeah, it kind of was, actually. Veronica, again, really good on this storyline. I think her being like, do you want to blow off prom? We don't have to do this. And Archie saying, no, this is our last chance, maybe, to really be with our friends and dance with them. Really like the scene overall, and I think there's notes of what is going on with them here, but it felt very true to the characters at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. And it just sets everything up that we're about to talk about perfectly.
Yeah.
So then Cheryl is in her dress. Nana's about to take a picture. Toni comes in. Cheryl says, oh, Toni, you came. And Toni says, was there any doubt? And this, to me, was the resolution of the storyline. Like in any other episode, this would have been the end here, and we would kind of move on from there. Obviously, there's a bit more, but I like this quite a bit. This track to me, I was like, oh, okay, that's good. We got to this point we're supposed to get to. But then we get a great montage of everybody getting ready for the prom, which is very cute. We mentioned the Shoney thing. Archie talks to Hiram. Hiram's like, hey, do you want to be Deputy Bear?
Again, wild, but makes perhaps the most sense of anything that's been laid at Archie's feet. Him staying in town and being like sort of bearing the standard of Fred Andrews.
And also, speaking of Archie's feet, he was rocking Chucks, which was classic.
And the line that really stuck out for me here is smile and say endgame.
Yes.
Whoo!
Burn, kiss of death.
I'll tell you what. We haven't been huge fans about the overuse of the word endgame on the show. Like, you get one, but 3, 4, maybe too much. This one worked for me. I was okay with this one.
Wow.
Well, this one was the twist in the wound. It was like taking the endgame moniker and really burning it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get Betty and Jughead, another very sweet getting ready for prom scene. Pete,
Jughead, come on, Jughead being like, you take my breath away. Just unbelievable. I mean,
just setting us up for disaster. My notes to echo yours from earlier was, this is stressful.
I didn't necessarily get that from this scene. Like, I think
it's going into the next scene is where I was like,
but
this is all.
It was a very, very sweet, nice moment, and belong together.
I mean, very much like this montage felt like the calm before the storm, or sort of like that picture perfect prom that we all had in our heads before you go to the actual prom, and then we go there. And I was very surprised we got all the prom stuff right here. I thought it was going to be the whole new episode.
Me too. But I did appreciate, just a little note, not a ton of phallus in this episode, but them taking the pictures, very cute. Them dancing like a bunch of parent dorks later on, also very cute. We need more of it, particularly because we know we're losing Skeet Ulrich in 2 episodes' time. But just, it was nice to see them. It was nice that they got those cute little parent moments.
F Palace.
And then
also appreciate Betty coming down the stairs, and immediately after that, them going to Kiss Me by Sixpence None the Richer, giving a shout out to She's All That. Right?
Wow. Yeah.
I guess so.
That
or
tracks.
just a shout out to that song being popular when, I'm guessing, the writers and creators of this show, when they were in high school.
I think so, but there's the whole thing with Rachel Lee Cook coming down the stairs and Kiss Me starts playing. Come on, man.
You're right.
Come on.
Your knowledge of 90s teen movies is
borders on gross.
Yeah, exactly. Worrisome is what I was going to say.
Yes,
and
that's
then
fair.
Speaking of 90s teens, someone had to spike the punch, and it was Reggie.
Yes, Reggie spiked it with Fizzle Rocks, I believe, so everybody's going to have crazy hallucinations.
Yeah, I was like, oh, only on Riverdale does someone spike the punch with a hallucinogenic drug that we don't understand the consequences.
And it plays out in the episode not at all.
Not even a little bit.
So we get a nice montage. Everybody's dancing. I think, I'm sure everybody would have wanted more prom, but I appreciated the fact that, like, we took the moment to see everybody slow-mo dancing, everybody in their dresses, everybody going through the prom stuff. This is about as much time as Riverdale could spare for this sort of thing, but at least it wasn't last season's dance, which felt perfunctory compared to everything else.
Yes, 100%. And I like the parents are all at the prom, very small town thing. The small town where my family's from, the parents watching the bleachers above the gym, all of their children at the prom.
Whoa, that's creepy.
I went when my brother went to prom with the girl he was dating from way upstate there. We went and sat in the bleachers, and I was like, this is weird.
Yeah. This is weird. Why would you do that? Then
better than TV.
What? I don't know if that's true.
Then Kevin, this is probably a good time to mention we have a recap podcast for everybody's proms you should check out called Prom After Dark.
Yeah,
I don't think we do have that.
Gets fucked up quick.
Kevin gives a sweet toast.
Well, I wanted to mention before you get to the toast, which is way down there, Pete. That is first. Kevin does the sweet toast about surviving the town. You're right. I skipped over the note. My apologies. Everybody slow dances. And then we get another heartbreaking but great scene with Veronica and Archie as they're dancing. She reveals, of course, the deputy mayor thing was her plan. She's going to defer Barnard for a year. And that's the thing that breaks Archie. He confesses that Carrie the Torch was Betty. He says they kissed once. It's over. Loved how the scene was played out. Loved the honesty from Archie, the fact that he did it for Veronica and came out there. Her slow realization that this is true and that what's happening, followed immediately by the interruption of the prom queens. Every time they cut to them just standing there coiled. Excruciating, but great.
And especially excruciating, and I love this choice, that Varchie knows Bughead does not. That I thought was just so much more devastating in that moment, because it's just pinned so hard, and then you see Betty realize something's wrong. Like the way it moved through the group, like the tremors of an earthquake, I thought was really great.
And the way they're forced to dance together, and just that moment was just, they did a great job on that whole sequence.
And of course, Fade Into You, the ultimate fucked up romantic song to play, is what we get here.
And then we get the reveal of the prom queens, who of course are Cheryl and Toni, because nobody else was running, which maybe cuts into the victory a little bit, but still it was nice to see them up there. They get the crowns, and then we get a very sweet moment where Cheryl says they are Riverdale's first openly gay royal couple, but they wouldn't mean anything about their friends. And this is also definitely digging in the knife, but from their perspective, very sweet, inviting Bughead and Kangs and Varchie to dance with them. Very good, but awful at the same time.
Poor timing.
Yeah, Veronica and Archie look strung out at that point.
Yeah.
But of course, it gets interrupted in classic Riverdale fashion. The music cuts. It's the rave. Psycho Killer plays. Everybody thinks, oh, business is normal. They don't notice the footage of everybody in character masks dancing around the owl and stabbing them until Betty and Jughead cut it out. Does this still cut it out? Yes, thank you, Pete. Does this still point to your Jelly Bean theory if it happens to Prom, given that we don't see Jelly Bean anywhere here?
Hell yeah, it does.
Yeah, there's no. I mean, I don't think it proves or disproves it. The fact that it was at Prom. I think the fact that it's at Prom means it was done by someone who knows how important Prom is to everybody.
Yeah, I think
it's a great place to get your revenge.
Everybody knows J Beans hates the Prom, and this is kind of like her, like, fuck you, fuck your institution, fuck you, think you're better than everybody. I'm taking it all away.
J Beans.
Classic J Beans. We also got a quick shot, which I thought was very weird. Peaches and Cream was also there. I don't know if you noticed that. But she's like in one shot. I feel like either use her or don't use her, but kind of make a decision there. It's weird.
It's a tease.
A character that was like, I'm important to this show. And it was like, nope. Turns out maybe not. But hopefully maybe it's an indication that we will see.
Yeah, more to come.
We also should probably talk about, while we're still on the Prom, the fact that K.O. Kelly comes to Prom with them.
Why not?
Adorable.
Pop into a random prom. And no matter how old you are, it's always fun to pop into a prom.
Yeah, he's like,
no, that's not true.
I also appreciate that he's like, yeah, I'm not going to wear a suit jacket.
Yeah.
Yep.
None
Hey,
of these fit me.
you guys promming over here? Yeah, I get it. I'm from Queens.
Oh, good. Whatever. Let's have a little fun.
You got prom queens? I'm from Queens.
And he's even in the toast. Kevin being like, hey, to all of you, also K.O. Kelly, who is also here in the background.
Yep.
Love it.
So that's the end of Prom. Kevin says, what the hell just happened? And then we get to the thing that is so frustrating for me. The Toni and Cheryl scene. Toni and Cheryl talk in the hallway. Toni says, I can't go home with you.
Right.
Toni doesn't get home by midnight. Her Nana will never talk to her again. Family is the most important thing. Scheller thanks her for the night, says she'll always remember this. And the last note as she goes home is crying on Nana Blossom's lap and says, I guess me and Toni won't end up together. I'm meant to be alone. This is the part that, like, turned me into that dude from Up with the flames on my head, because I was like, there is no world where Toni chooses her dad is like, ultimatum, I'm choosing Nana over Cheryl. That just would not happen with the Toni that we've known over the past couple of seasons.
Well, all Blossoms spend some amount of their lives living in the walls of a mansion, if I remember correctly. So
yes,
I think it's her turn
continuity-wise, yeah.
Yeah, it's her turn to be a wall walker.
Are you talking about the Lewis Black character with this?
Yeah, you're talking about the Inside Out guy.
Inside Out guy. Okay.
Yes.
All right. You said
did I say Up?
said Up. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So I lost everything you said after that because I was still
sorry,
trying to
I was
piece
talking
that
about the dog from Up. Like, that's what I turned into.
Yeah.
And I
You're
was
like,
like,
squirrel.
I hid under your porch because I love you.
Wow, good impression.
Thank you.
Very good impression. Slight sidetrack to what we were actually talking about. I agree with you that this felt a little, we need this to be happening for the plot, and it happened sort of quickly. And I don't know what this means for Cheryl, because Cheryl, of anybody, doesn't want to be alone. Like, her whole thing has been, I need to be around people who aren't my family because my family is bad.
I don't know why you turned to Lewis Black. I feel like this was a classic, like, there's an issue. Cheryl completely overreacts. I think that, like, hopefully what's going to happen is that Cheryl is going to win over the family. But I think it's just Cheryl kind of being like, it's over. You know, she couldn't come home with me. And I think it's not as bad as she thinks.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, the second time I watched it through, I felt like, okay, maybe there is this interpretation where it's Cheryl being Cheryl and Toni saying, oh, I just got to book out for the night. And Cheryl being like, well, I guess we're broken up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, true.
So that is possible as well. But on first watch, that was the part that I was super furious about, because to the points that you're making, Cheryl does not care about her family that way, and Toni would not be like, no, I'm going with your ultimatum, so none of that necessarily made sense.
I mean, she did the whole thing. She went to the prom, they won it, she did all this for her. She's got to be home by midnight. Like, fucking shut the fuck up.
Wow.
Okay.
All right. Now you're taking it too far, buddy.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Future mean dad over here.
So let's start to wrap this up.
curfew.
There's only a couple more things that happened in the episode, but they're big things. Veronica and Archie talk in the music room. He, of course, took her there to the place that he's had sex with multiple people in order to
I feel comfortable here in this sex room where music happens too.
Yeah.
Yes. Veronica, and I know I keep saying the same thing, but I love this conversation. I love the maturity of it, the fact that they're clearly on the brink of crying, but they realize this, I don't know if you guys experienced this, but this was I felt like a classic high school thing that I experienced with several steady couples in my friend group where they reached a point where they're like, I don't know what we're going to do after graduation. We probably should break up, but let's stay together until after graduation just to keep things steady, and then we'll move on from there.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, that didn't happen to a lot of people in my life, but I get what they're doing, especially Veronica. She's someone who wants to, she's like, I can control my emotions. I can't control dealing with everyone else weighing in on it. So I would much rather keep it sort of a secret, which I thought it was a very strong character move.
I really like Veronica's line where she was saying, I don't want to continue having this conversation because I'm afraid of where it's going to go.
Well, and also the fact that they don't want to blow up Bughead. I mean, that's obviously coming in some way. There's no way around it. But that was also a mature
Or it makes Bughead stronger. Just makes them stronger.
No. I'm so
as
sorry.
As they grow and stay the solidified.
But yeah, Varchie kind of staying together for the kids until graduation happens.
Oh, boy.
And then we cut over to the video store. Nobody's there. There's just an owl mask and some weird signs and cameras, so they've missed them. We get a quick scene of Veronica crying alone, Hermione with some sort of delightful-looking drink.
Because he has to beat people to stay alive, and Veronica just gave him the go-ahead to beat the shit out of Archie. I mean,
Hiram,
Yeah.
Well, she doesn't see him there, but Hiram, that was definitely the oh shit moment. Hiram is going to kill
You
Archie
have a
this time.
supervillain dad. You know that if you say things out loud, or he sees and hears all.
In the last little bit, we get Bughead is talking to Charles. David is on the run. They're not sure that he's the voyeur or the auteur, but they do know that there's going to be more videotapes. They're going to wait and see what happens. And whatever happens next might bring things to the breaking point. That's when Archie gets a video reenacting the Black Hood putting the gun to his head and pops way back at the, I believe, end of season 1, right?
Right.
And that is clearly going to set him off in some way as we enter the beginning of season 5, but the end game of season 4.
Man.
Ooh, you're really using the term end game a lot.
Yeah.
I thought this was, it's interesting that this was the tape that ends the episode. It makes me think whoever the auteur is, perhaps Jay Beans, it's really about getting revenge on them as a group and individually. Now, why is that, do you think?
None of them played Minecraft with her. She was upstairs waiting for them to play Minecraft for months. Nobody brought her food, water, anything.
Do you think... revenge. Minecraft revenge. Do you think it's is she protecting, if it is Jelly Beans, is she like getting revenge on the people that have hurt Jughead?
Ooh, I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting.
But it was just, I was like, man, Archie is just having a rough night, man. Goes from getting the shit kicked out of him to then breaking up and then this fucking creepy video. I was like, man,
classic prom night.
Yeah.
That's what I did after my prom night. I was like,
fortunately,
Archie
has
night, we're all going to watch a fucked up video.
I mean, that's sort of true in a lot of ways.
Yes,
I think since Archie has a goldfish memory, I think he's fine.
Oh, okay.
So there we go. That is the first episode back of Riverdale. Before we wrap up here, who is the MVP of the episode? I think I already said who mine is, so I can go first. But Veronica.
Clearly, it's going to be Veronica for you, Alex, K.O. Kelly for Pete, leaving me to choose someone else.
Yes, but I will say I think Camila Mendez played this whole episode excellently. beautiful singing as usual with Carry the Torch, but the emotional roller coaster that she went throughout the episode was really good. It was really a well-written storyline. I think KJ Apa as Archie is like a close second there just in terms of being the relationship, but the reactions that went over her face over the course of the episode I thought were fantastic. And I love the decision at the end. I think, like I said, really smart, mature decision. I like that a bit. Pete, do you want to jump in and say the thing that we already know you're going to say?
Sure, yes. I would like to give honorable mention to Betty because Betty all day or every day. But K.O. Kelly was just such a nice, refreshing thing to bring into this cast, this precious little light, that hopefully Riverdale won't ruin.
What about you, Justin? Have you figured out your third option?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Veronica really was the standout this episode, but I'll pick Archie. Archie was the most Archie of all this episode, and it really proves what, like, we talk a lot about how fast Riverdale moves, the pace of the show, and how much happens. And I think Archie's inability to conceal deceit is a big motivator of that. And it's really nice to see in the prom section of this episode was so strong, so stressful. The fact that he instigated that, I thought was great.
Good stuff. And thank you all for listening. Thanks for tuning in. We're very excited to be talking about the show once again. And it seems like it's going to be going nonstop for a bunch of weeks here before it takes a break a couple of months down the road. So that's exciting. A couple of places to find us, patreon.com/comic book club for all of our tickle videos. We do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Crowdcast and YouTube, and would love to talk to you about Riverdale. Come hang out on the Comic Book Club channel on YouTube. iTunes, Android, Spotify, Stitcher, or the app of your choice to subscribe and listen to the show socially at Riverdale Dark on Twitter, at Riverdale After on Instagram, Riverdale After Dark on Facebook, comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. Until next time, we'll see you after dark.
After dark. We back, baby.